Okay, so hi everyone. Welcome to this online webinar. I'm very happy to be here with you all. It's a webinar dedicated to blue economy and the potential of blue economy to deliver a positive outcome, of course, for the people, but also for our planet and climate. This is a very, very important topic, obviously, because as I'm sure everybody here on the call knows, the ocean is 70% of our planet. So, if you ask me, it could be and should be 70% of the solution. But we're not yet there. It doesn't mean that we cannot be there. It just means that we need to put much more time, energy, and focus on making this happen. Obviously, the world is going through important challenges and crises, from climate to biodiversity loss, as well as socioeconomic development more generally. And as I just mentioned, of course, the ocean can be a source of a tremendous solution, but only and only if we find ways to sustainably use ocean resources, natural resources, as well as generate or regenerate the ecosystems and the ocean, which currently are not in a good state, to put it simply. So today the discussion is going to be about what can we do? What could be the solution, and what can be the role of the youth, local communities, the private sector, of course, the government, and how can we accelerate the development and the unlocking of those solutions for climate, for the planet, and for the people. And so without further ado, I'm going to ask for everybody on the call just to very quickly introduce themselves, less than a minute, please, and then I'll welcome our first speaker just to give a bit of some reflection and some proposition on the way forward. So first, I'm going to ask Batusu to just say hi and then hand over to the next speaker. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Thomas. So my name is Fatura Kutundazat. I'm from Madagascar, and I am the chair of the Mihari Network. I'm a local community advocate. And I'm also the founder of Beulve, which is the first model of a small-scale fisheries trust fund in Madagascar. And I'm also a member of the Africa Europe Foundation Strategic Group on Ocean Governance. And it is a great honor to be invited for this discussion today. Thank you.
Wonderful. Elizabeth, over to you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Elizabeth Okula from Kenya. I'm the co-founder of Akomnara, where we provide water quality monitoring solutions for fish farmers. Today, I'm so excited to take part in this debate and looking forward to sharing my views. Thank you.
Wonderful. Manuel, over to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Thomas. So my name is Manuel Tumba. And I was recently elected as the new chair of the African Union Youth Advisory Board on disaster risk reduction. So we work under the African Union Commission, and the board is coordinated by the Department of Agriculture, Blue Economy, and Sustainable Environment in collaboration with the Youth Division. So apart from that, I'm also the founder of the PPP, the public-private partnership called TODAS Global Network. Thank you.
Wonderful, and congratulations on your new appointment. Now over to Sylvia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sylvia. I'm from Poland, and I'm managing consultant at ERM, where I focus on environmental and social impact assessments for offshore wind farms. But a part of that, I'm also a member of the Advisory Council on Youth Affairs to the President of Poland, where I focus on the topics of youth and climate change. And previously, I was also the president of the Youth Climate Council Poland, advising the Minister of Climate and Environment in Poland. And it's also a great honor for me to be here, and thank you for this opportunity to share my ideas and experience in the sustainable blue economy. Thank you.
Wonderful. And then last but not least, Abimbola.
Hello, everyone, and good morning once again. My name is Abikoye Abimbola. I'm a Nigerian. I work with the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crimes as a national consultant in helping to support with quick implementation plan, and I'm also the founder of Revamp Wave Network, where we work in climate education and also helping coastal communities be at the front line of ocean conservation and marine wildlife protection.
Terrific. Well, we have a very distinguished and very great panel here today. So I'm very happy to be here. I probably should have started with that, but my name is Thomas Bana. I work as a senior fellow for the Africa Europe Foundation, and today I'm going to be moderating this panel. I also work for IUCN as the regional head for oceans based in Africa, in Kenya, actually in Nairobi, where I'm talking from today. So without further ado, I'd love to, sort of invite you, Elizabeth, to sort of provide a bit of some of the reflection on, how can we accelerate basically the development of a nature, climate, people positive blue economy, and what do you think could be sort of important ways that we can accelerate this process? Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. We can all agree that the impact of climate change and also human activities in the blue economy sector is very devastating. But also at the same time, we see further. We can see the potential of blue economy in transforming lives, because in the context of Kenya and also the whole of Africa, we have so many local communities which depend on the marine or the coastal regions for their source of income. So for us to, to realize the potential of the blue economy based on my personal experience and also having seen the devastating impact of the climate change on my local communities, number one is around creating awareness. Most of the local communities don't even know that, there is issues such as, reduction in the fish stock. They just hear it from the radio, they just hear it from, some other people. But if you go on the ground and ask them if it is something that they're really aware, then they don't have any idea on how they can become part of it. So we want to ensure, number one, that they are part of this particular solution. So if we're proposing like 1 or 2, 3 things to help them advance in their local activities, they are part of those solutions. Number 2, it is around research and innovation. We have technology with us right now. The big question is, how can we leverage the technology to solve the critical issues around the blue economy? Currently, we have overfishing in Lake Victoria, as well as in the Indian Ocean, and which majority of the local communities rely on fish for their basic needs. They rely on going for fishing so that they can earn at least source of income. When we don't have those fish in the oceans or in the lake, then they are left devastated. So we need to think of how can we leverage on technology so that we can help the farmers, number one, to help them identify the best places where they can get, the right stock of fish. At the same time, to promote things around aquaculture. So with the rise of the aquaculture, we can help reduce the pressure on fishing in the lake and also in the oceans, and also at the same time helping these people within the local communities to, still get access to the source of protein as well as the source of income which they are in dire need of. The other thing is, I think, around collaboration. So collaborating, this comes from research institutes collaborating with local communities. And this is, I'm borrowing from what KEMFRI in Kenya is doing. So KEMFRI stands for Kenya Marine Fisheries Institute. Currently, they have different projects. So they have a project in the coastal region where they are trying to promote awareness around the power of mangroves, especially in carbon sequestering. So when you have such kind of collaboration with the local communities, at the same time collaboration with the governments and collaborations between continents and also between different countries, we can help each other to create more awareness around the power of blue economy, at the same time to, bring all the solutions and implement them. Thank you.
Wonderful. No, thank you so much, Elizabeth. So you've mentioned, of course, the need for us to work a lot on awareness, on R&D innovation. You've suggested that aquaculture could be an interesting areas of work where more solutions could be developed. And of course, the critical importance of partnerships, cooperation, and of course, strong involvement of local communities. Manuel, I'd love to hear some of your thought on this, as well as, of course, if you have any reflection on areas that we could further sort of pursue and try to unlock. Over to you, Manuel. Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much, Mr. Thomas. So I definitely agree with Elizabeth when it comes to creating awareness and the different points that she mentioned. So from my side, I will bring the perspective of effective disaster risk reduction. So the significance of our oceans cannot be overstated. So it's important for us to be able to think of how the resources of the oceans are used and how sustainably are we predicting the different risks in terms of disaster risk that can happen in terms of maritime coastal monitoring. So according to the UNDRR, the past decade has witnessed a significant increase in the frequency and intensity of ocean-related disasters, such as storm, sorties, cyclones, and sea level rises have resulted in economic losses. So this economic toll has not only affected developed nations, but also has hit developing countries the hardest. So Africa and Europe are not immune to these challenges, as coastal communities in both regions face growing risk from extreme weather events. So studies indicated that over 60% of Africa population reside in coastal areas, leaving them vulnerable to the devastating impact of ocean-related disasters. The European continent too has experienced severe coastal flooding and storm sorties, with over 75 million Europeans living within 10 kilometers of the coast. So in this perspective, I would like to propose 4 key ideas. So the first being that we must prioritize strategies to build resilience and preparedness, ensuring that our coastal communities can withstand and recover from impact of disasters. The second being investing in advanced early warning systems can save lives and reduce the human toll of these events. Timely alerts and evacuation plans are instrumental in mitigating the impact of cyclones and tsunamis, as seen in successful cases where these measures have reduced causalities significantly. The third point would be climate smart infrastructure development for coastal resilience. And by building stronger adaptive infrastructure that can withstand natural disasters, we can protect critical assets and ensure the community of economic activities, the continuity of economic activities and the aftermath of such events. So additionally, the fourth point that I will propose will be sustainable resources exploitation that plays a pivotal role in disaster risk reduction. So overfishing and destructive fishing practices weaken the resilience of marine ecosystem, leaving them more vulnerable to the impact of disasters. So by embracing responsible fishing practices and supporting marine protected areas, we can strengthen the natural defenses provided by health ecosystems against climate-induced hazards. In conclusion, I would say disaster risk reduction might must be a cornerstone of our dialogue concerning the blue economy and ocean preservation. As we explore the potential of blue economy, let us not overlook the imperative of safeguarding our oceans and coastal communities from the growing threats of natural disasters. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manuel. Those, I think, are extremely important, very relevant points. Because indeed, as you've just said, climate change is happening now. It's not in 50 years, it's not in 30 years. It's today, and those extreme weather events and other sort of disasters will only increase, unfortunately. So indeed, having a strong focus on reducing the risk of the impact of those disasters is going to be extremely important, because ultimately, a blue economy is that unlocks sort of its potential and really sort of positively impact people, planet, and the climate. And the climate is a resilient blue economy, and so we need to build that resilience. You've talked also about the need to build preparedness through early warning systems and other sort of climate smart infrastructure, as well as, of course, support the sustainable use of natural resources. And of course, I would even add here probably the need to regenerate some of those critical ecosystems that play a critical role in reducing the risk of disasters, so what we call the ECO-DRR, eco-disaster risk reduction, through the implementation of nature-based solutions. Vatusu, you've worked obviously a lot in those areas, hand in hand with local communities, fishermen communities. I'd love for you to sort of have a bit of reflection on what the suggestion of Elizabeth and Manuel have been, and maybe some perspective from your side. Thank you so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Thomas, and thanks to Elizabeth and Manuel about those great ideas. So maybe just about what Elizabeth mentioned about awareness. I think for local communities, it's not only awareness about the resources and the impact of climate change, but I would mention also awareness about what is climate change, because what I've noticed in Madagascar and in some countries in Africa is some of coastal communities are not really aware of what is climate change. How can they be resilient and be mitigate against it? How can they better be supported? So I think the awareness should also focus on how they could be aware of what is climate change, what are the impact of it, what are the threats of them. And also about the research that Elizabeth mentioned, we know that those small-scale fishers, they are the guardians of our ocean. They know everything about the ocean, which means that we really need to value the traditional knowledge. So they have some mitigation action and adaptive action against climate change that should be valued, which means that what I would suggest is, apart from research, like academic research and research institutes supporting in climate change actions, we should definitely capitalize what are the traditional knowledge of the small-scale fishers. What I've noticed, for example, in my country, like they're really good in building their houses based on the location of mangroves, because they know where is the wind, how can the cyclone hit them. So there are just some traditional knowledge that should be considered. And then I think I would mention about I think Manuel's suggestions about preparedness is really great, but sometimes we have some infrastructure, some equipment, but sometimes local communities are not really able to use them because they're sometimes too complicated, they're not well maintained. So this means that maybe it would be interesting for funders to support them for equipment and infrastructure, and not based only on project approach, like only for 3 years and no one is really taking care of it after that, but something that is permanent and where local communities can feel secure. What I would add is we know that local communities and small-scale fishers are really the most vulnerable of climate change impact, especially women and kids. So for me, I think most of the funding should be mobilized and used for food security, and also support for the local communities for them to be supported in terms of natural disasters. I think I don't have much to add, but what I wanted to mention, since I'm working on the LMMA approach, for me, one of the solutions if you talk about coastal communities, is really to expand the concept of locally managed marine areas, which is really effective in terms of, let's say, fisheries management in general, but also in solidarity between small-scale fishers, between stakeholders working on the ocean governance in general. So for me, I think one of the suggestions would be for each countries in Africa to adopt the LMMA approach to support for the government to support their countries in expanding LMMA, to create associations where small-scale fishers can be covered into an association, and where it is also really easier for them to get funding from philanthropists or get collaboration and partnership from other stakeholders. And what I would mention is also like investing in youth in local communities, mainly local communities. We talked about, I think it was Elizabeth that mentioned about technology. We know that like when you talk about technology, it's mainly youth know that have, let's say we have some startups, some incubator initiatives. So what would be really interesting would be to capitalize all of those innovations from youth, and how can they get financial support and also technical support to develop their projects in the countries that they are working, and also really to invest in them, especially in language, because one of the issues for youth is, I think, language barrier, which really don't allow them to attend, for example, international conferences or just opportunities to meet with funders. So I think that's all from me. Thank you.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Badu. So I think you make a very, very sort of important point on, I guess, sort of, we might sometimes have a tendency to reinvent the wheel, to come sort of with new technology, new innovation, where in fact there is already a tremendous amount of local knowledge and traditional sort of understanding of how to best actually manage those resources, how to best adapt to changes. And indeed, I think you make a very important point on the need and the opportunity really towards climate change adaptation and biodiversity, and in fact also developing a blue economy in empowering local communities and fishermen communities in actually sort of becoming much more the steward of those areas, giving them the rights, the tools, the means, and the funding as well to really sort of do what they are best placed to do. So I think that's a very, very important point. Yet, of course, there is also an opportunity for us to invest in youth, as you've mentioned, and really help them develop some of those innovations, some of those enterprises that can really have tremendous potential locally. I'd love to turn to you, Abimbola, to sort of hear your thoughts on this as well, and what do you think from your perspective could be areas of collaboration and potential for the continent. Over to you. Thanks.
Okay. So I would just like to highlight three major things amongst many other things that are potential to helping partnerships, collaborations, helping to utilize the ocean's potential, as well as helping to curb climate change effects, particularly on coastal communities. And three of the many crucial highlights for me would be deploying various avenues to combating illegal marine wildlife, as well as the second would be to integrate coastal communities and their residents into conservation efforts and marine protection, and as well as to invest more in policy formulation processes that can help strengthen the various policies, as well as integrating intelligence gathering to help curb these menaces. So I'd like to say that the ocean is one of the largest resources that we have that provides us with economic development, livelihoods, as well as help as one of the largest carbon sinks that helps to regulate the climate. And so there are many species that are not accounted for. However, for those that have been accounted for, there are lots of illegal trade that are beginning to hamper on these potential resources that can help sustain livelihood, particularly for local economies. to which coastal communities are at the front line. So we have many of our fishermen beginning to lose their jobs, and it's beginning to increase poverty level, as well as due to many of the lack of knowledge that these communities have in aiding illegal marine wildlife trade and crimes as well. So from my own perspective, and based on my experiences that I've had in exploring some of the communities that I've been opportune to explore, I would say that these three challenges stop my chat, because many of these communities, they don't even have the knowledge. Like Bashwa has said, they don't have the knowledge, and they don't know that they are amplifying illegal marine wildlife crimes. And because of the loss of job, lack of employment, living below poverty line, many of them engage in these activities unknowingly. And it will shock you to know that many of these people understand the many environmental impacts that climate change is having, because they're experiencing it. They might likely not have the words or the right knowledge, or will I say words and knowledge to express or explain what they're experiencing. But these people have been living in the coast, along coastline for a very long time, even from hundreds and hundreds of years, because these people are indigenous and are local communities. So they have the capacity to help improve. So one of the other one of the other challenge that I would like to highlight is culture, because culture play a crucial role. For Africa, particularly in Nigeria, there are many species that are used for numerous activities, traditional practices, religious purposes, and they depend solely on these species. And so culture is one of the major issues causing illegal wildlife crimes and killings. And also, I've realized, and based on my research and some of the communities I've been, like I said earlier, I've realized that culture also plays a crucial role in defining conservation method and protection method. And how does culture play a huge role? Before now, there are various methods that communities have had to embark on in protecting and preserving marine wildlife. These sort of resources are things that we can tap into, and these resources are already passed from one generation to the other. Documenting all these processes, as well as improving it with consolidated data, can help not just raise awareness, not just educate coastal community people, but also help to track and keep records of how illegal wildlife crimes are being done. So I'd like to also put our attention to issues of fishing and bycatch. Three of the major species that I know that are indigenous to us in Africa and have major issues are seahorses, for instance. I like to use that as an example, because some of these species of seahorses are found in the Gulf of Guinea. And so these species are millions and millions of these species are caught through bycatch, through fishing bycatch, and we realized that the evolution of this bycatch have been used to do different things, such as jewelry and all the other medicinal purposes that comes with it. So I'm saying that if the right policies that include coastal communities challenges are embedded in the policies that are made, strengthened by enforcement responses, which are more to be proactive than reactive, we would scale in enhancing the potential of the ocean resources that is indigenous to also Africa, and also helping to invest more, giving financial investments to help build intelligence gathering would go a long way, because one of the things that we lack in the African continent is building consolidated data to help the various law enforcement agencies come together and deploy relevant responses to help curb these menaces. And also the issue of advocacy can never be overemphasized, because continuous, consistent advocacy and awareness, particularly for local communities. And like Vashu has said, because we sort of have similar things that we're doing for coastal communities, language play a strong role in helping as well, because we cannot tell them the science about the ocean. We cannot tell them the science about climate change. They would not understand. However, they know these things. But putting their mind to it, telling them in their local languages can also help to amplify and curb their own participation in enhancing illegal marine wildlife trade. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Abimbola. I think you make a very important point indeed on the the issue and the challenges of unsustainable use of natural resources, and of course, beyond just unsustainable use, is also illegal trade, crime, and use of sort of wildlife assets and governance, resources. But as much as, and you've pointed out in your remarks, is that as much as local communities can be part of that unsustainable use or illegal use at times, even though they are unknowingly part of this, in many cases, they can also be part of the solution in addressing those challenges. And it's a question of, here again, empowering them, giving them the finance, the tools, the rights to actually do so. And I think those, once again, are an extremely important point about the fact that ultimately, local communities are the best place sort of people to actually be the stewards of nature, natural resources, and of those areas. Sylvia, now I'm going to turn to you, and I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of what has been discussed so far, and maybe any reflection or perspective that you might have from your side. Thanks. Over to you.
Thank you, Thomas. I will share shortly my thoughts on previous proposition from previous speaker, and then maybe I will also introduce my perspective on the sustainable use of the energy from the ocean. So I believe I'm the only person here who is localized in the European Union, so it could be possible to think that we have a very different perspective and different experiences, but I have to say that this is not true, and it's actually great that we have this platform for exchange of ideas, because speaking from the perspective, maybe not the whole European Union, but at least Poland, I think we have a lot of issues to share. So as you probably know, Poland is a fairly landlocked country, but we still have an access to the Baltic Sea, which is a bit of a unique sea. It's also landlocked, so it reminds more of a lake rather than a sea itself. And you spoke a lot about the local knowledge on ocean issues and involving local communities, and especially youth, in the protection of marine resources. And what I can say from the perspective of Poland, we can also see that we are lacking this local knowledge, for example, among fishermen who are very impacted by diminishing fishing quotas, and who are not in the position to understand why, for example, they keep catching less Baltic cod and other fish species. So I think there's still a lot of work to do in increasing this local knowledge and explaining that all of our actions have an impact on ocean and ocean resources, and the climate change, which is also connected with the ocean. And here I would like to provide some examples from Poland, some solutions that we implemented with engaging youth in those solutions. So in Poland, we have the Youth Climate Council that works with the Climate and Environment Ministry of Poland. And we prepared some lesson scenarios on climate change that will be implemented in schools. And we also focused on topics of ocean conservancy, on water usage efficiency, and climate change. And we think this is the first step and the best way to engage youth, to prepare something for youth that will increase our knowledge, and at least we can make sure that the future generation will be equipped in this knowledge and will be able to engage in marine resources protection. But also on the level of private business and other sectors' involvement. For example, we signed the offshore sector deal with numerous private companies, insurance companies, green fund banks, and so on, making sure that we all understand, for example, in the case of the energy from the offshore wind farm sector development, that we all have to protect the marine ecosystem for the blue economy, and we have to bring in the local communities, we have to bring in the local content, and we have to make sure that our fishermen are reskilled, that they can find new opportunities and new livelihoods. So coming into my proposition, I would like to talk a little bit about this offshore wind farms in Poland and the sustainable usage of energy from the ocean in creating blue economy that's sustainable, not just for the environment, but also for the society. So we all know that offshore wind farms, they utilize the powerful and constant winds that blow over the ocean to generate green and renewable energy. And I believe that by investing in such green energy sources, we can significantly reduce our reliance on fossil fuels and reduce harmful greenhouse gas emissions, which in case of Europe, and I think especially heavily dependent on coal in Poland, this is a very important case to make sure that we can combat climate change and we can protect not only the planet, but mostly the ocean, which, as Thomas said before, is 70% of the planet. Poland, similarly like other EU nations, we face the challenge of transitioning from this coal to meet climate goals. And I think that with the offshore wind farms in Poland, but I think generally in worldwide with the ocean technology, we have a golden opportunity to steer our energy sector towards sustainability. And just to put things into perspective, a single 10 megawatts wind turbine can save nearly 19,000 tons of CO2 annually. And that's equivalent to planting approximately 1.5 million trees each year. So it's not only just about the blue economy, but it's also about combating climate change and saving our oceans. And it also holds tremendous promise for our society, especially, as I mentioned, in the traditional industries like fisheries, which also face their own challenges due to the shrinking fishing quotas. And if we approach this blue economy sustainably, but with our society in mind, we can revitalize those social communities and those fishing sectors. So, for example, what we do in Poland, we invest in the reskilling of fishermen in roles that can be used in the blue economy, and we create new jobs opportunities for them, and ultimately bringing new prosperity to the fishing towns and villages. So, for example, we can train fishermen to collect and analyze data on weather conditions, sea currents, marine wildlife, or we can use their unique knowledge on marine safety and navigation in roles such as offshore vessel operators or navigators, ensuring the safe transportation of personnel and equipment to and from the offshore energy infrastructure and other innovative offshore technologies. But for that to be effective, we need a good governance. And I think the good governance starts with transparency, inclusivity, and stakeholder engagement in decision-making process, just to make sure that we have all relevant parties together at the same page. And we need rigorous environmental assessments and monitoring mechanisms so we can understand the impact on marine ecosystems, and in case they are negative, so we can mitigate them and then just ensure the sustainability for the ecosystems as well. And if we encourage this innovation and also international cooperation between the whole European Union or Africa and Europe, then we can have even more cleaner and efficient technologies, and we can share our efforts in preserving ocean resources. And something that I mentioned before with the fishermen communities, this governance should also address social and economic impacts on those communities by providing those reskilling trainings, for example, but also creating inclusive job opportunities for everyone, not only those who are already skilled. And by implementing such governance, we can pave the way for a greener, more prosperous future where our reliance on ocean resources is well balanced with our responsible stewardship for the current and future generation. So I think what we are talking here today, the blue economy and its sustainable use, we've mentioned different aspects, different topics. We've mentioned local communities, crime, knowledge creation. So I think this blue economy and realizing its potential for sustainable future is not an aspiration, it is necessity. We need that to move forward, to develop economies, to combat climate change, especially in countries heavily dependent on coal, such as Poland. But also it creates a lot of opportunities for fishing communities, for generally local communities. It creates new opportunities for growth and finding new livelihoods in case of the climate change and reducing, for example, fishing quotas. Thank you very much.
That was very dense. Lots of very, very important points. Thank you so much, Sylvia. I think you've made a very interesting point about the fact that indeed local communities, they do have this local traditional knowledge that is very important, extremely pertinent and relevant for local resources and the best way to use those resources. But they're also not necessarily aware of the sort of the bigger dynamics that are directly impacted them, in particular, of course, linked to, for instance, overfishing. And they're not necessarily the best place, therefore, to actually address those larger sort of the national or regional or even global level dynamics. And this is where more like, regional or global type of knowledge and processes and institutions can very much complement and support local communities and really complement their local knowledge and know-how. You've also sort of made as well, at least together with the others, the need to really have strong involvement of local communities, local stakeholders, through in particular good governance. Governance, ultimately, a good governance is a good way to make decisions, right? And everybody should be, all the stakeholders, meaning the ones who are directly impacted by those decisions, should have a seat at the table and be able to take part of the decision-making processes so that ultimately those decisions reflect the needs, priorities, and the vision of the relevant stakeholders. And indeed, you've finished also on the need to increase the delivery of training to local, to the youth, to local communities, so that they can really also benefit directly from the development of a blue economy, which is, as you said, not only an opportunity, but a necessity for us to be able to address and adapt to climate change, of course, address biodiversity loss, but ultimately, once again, also address and respond to the needs for socio-economic development of local communities. Maybe before we wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts to all of you. What do you think could be sort of a great potential for cooperation on those areas between Africa and Europe in particular? What do you think should be something that can directly benefit both continents, and where can we sort of move the needle maybe on this? I'd love to hear your thought on this, Elizabeth, sort of just maybe in 1 minute. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. So in terms of collaboration between Africa and Europe, number one is, I think it is around, understanding what do we all know about the blue economy. So if we can come together where we have platforms like this, sharing our different perspectives, sharing things that are working out and the things that are not working out, at least through that, we can also create awareness and also increase visibility on what is working in terms of the blue economy, as well as learn in terms of what are the technologies that are available that we could always borrow and see if they can work locally here in the context of Africa. The second one is creating I think a platform where we can have like a way to bring different stakeholders in terms of, they could be researchers, they could be funders or funders from Europe funding innovations in Africa, so that at least through it we can have increasing innovation and more young people getting engaged and also getting like enough fund to fund their local initiatives. And also at the same time we could have like this is more this will be capital intensive, but an exchange program where youth from Africa go to Europe, youth from Europe come to Africa, and then we learn now by practical application on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Those are very, very interesting suggestions. So knowledge sharing, you mentioned the need for us to do more on this, or at least to try to do more on this. The need to maybe have a multi-stakeholder type of platform to accelerate cooperation and collaboration. And of course, the opportunity eventually to have like some sort of like an exchange program between Europe and Africa. Manuel, what would you be, and here again, in 1 minute saying, suggestions or reflection on this? Thanks.
Okay, thank you so much. I definitely agree with Elizabeth, because I have 3 points that I wrote down. But one of the point was on having joint events toward capacity building and workshops. So some of those events sometimes can be in Africa or sometimes in Europe, but having panels and experts coming from both sides. And another aspect the second point that I mentioned is, advocating for funding for youth-driven project, because many youth are bringing some innovations addressing this problem in terms of capacity building, but also implementing in their communities. So advocating for funding from both continents. And the third point, and I think it's also really important, is maybe I think there's already an existing strategy group or working group. So I think maybe the working group can act as a think tank, I may say, or by recommending some reports, some implementation strategies, because the more there are reports and strategies coming from the strategy group, the more on both continents, maybe the government and policymakers can know more about these different strategies and problems and issues that we are addressing. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Manuel. So you've mentioned joint capacity building, bringing people from both continents would be beneficial. Funding for youth-led projects, as well as the investment into sort of knowledge, products, and strategies that can help unlock and further accelerate those mechanisms. But Sue, over to you. What would be sort of in 1 minute your thoughts on this?
I think Manuel and Elizabeth mentioned everything that I wanted to say, but I would just add the launch of a youth fellowship program for European and African youth, which will be a way to organize exchange and networking on specific topics like aquaculture development, or on gender, or on fisheries management. So the idea is really to launch youth leaders working on blue economy from Africa and Europe. And then I would propose also to organize exchange visits of private philanthropists, stakeholders, and private sectors from Europe to come to Africa to look for opportunities here, the potentials of youth, the potential of small-scale fisheries, and vice versa for stakeholders from Africa to go to Europe to meet with funders, with philanthropists, to go to their office and do like a elevator pitch about their project. And then I would mention about what I've said, like setting in place like a small-scale fisheries trust fund or a youth trust fund, where we mobilize funders and philanthropists and donors to put some funding that will support the small-scale fishers and those youth to get opportunities, to get their projects to be funded, or for them to get the opportunity to attend to conference. And finally, I would suggest also the development of Ocean Hub or Blue Business Incubators in Africa that will get the support from funders. Then it will be really an Africa and Europe Foundation scholarship and funding, but to be based in Africa, because it is, I think, what is really missing here, and it's mainly on technology issues, and it needs some technical support. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But so you've mentioned indeed, like Elizabeth, sort of the need to have this sort of exchange, sort of fellowship, leadership program dedicated to youth, which I think is something that we've been hearing for quite a few times. So I think this is very well taken. Of course, facilitate the collaboration with potential funders, philanthropists, donors, and other sort of relevant stakeholders from both continents. The opportunity to really sort of have a more dedicated funding mechanism towards and led and managed by indigenous people and local communities, and as well as the need and opportunity to establish more like local blue economy incubators to support local businesses and entrepreneurs in accelerating on their efforts. Maybe, Abimbola, what would be your thoughts here again in 1 minute? Thanks. Over to you.
Okay. Like I mentioned earlier, I'll just come from the three challenges that I've shared earlier, and also talk about strengthening the capacity of law enforcement to be able to deploy adequate response to so many of the illegal marine wildlife crimes, even at local community, and also building it at a regional level, and also to build the capacity of coastal communities, which are crucial, and also including them in policy formulation processes, because these are crucial. We cannot expressly explain the challenges the way the person who is feeling the challenges can express it. So strengthening their involvement in policy formulation, implementation, and evaluation processes to go a long way, both at national, regional, and local level, and also deploying technical skills, helping with giving technical skills to help build or to gather intelligence to be able to track many of these crimes, as well as able to deliver on adequate awareness of such challenges, as well as the potentials that lies in it. And these and many others are some of the solutions that we could work with to help consolidate cooperations and collaborations for the EU and the EU. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Abimbola. So yes, indeed, strengthening the collaboration between Africa and Europe in law enforcement and sort of really increasing that collaboration in managing those challenges and dynamics is indeed very, very key and very strategic. And as well as, of course, involving local communities in particular and local stakeholders in developing relevant and sort of locally relevant mechanism to address local issues as well. Last but not least, Sylvia, over to you. What in 1 minute?
Thank you. So I fully agree with the previous speakers, but we've heard a lot today about the youth engagement, and I would highlight the youth engagement in the governance. So from my own perspective, from my own experience, I believe that youth right now is driving the change, especially in the environmental and climate change protection. And sometimes it's not only about the funding. Sometimes you don't actually need that funding, but you need to give the youth the platform and the stage, and you have to give them all resources to be involved in the governance. And I know this is actually happening across Africa and Europe. There are numerous youth climate councils being established in different countries, but I think we should strengthen that cooperation between youth from different continents and exchange this knowledge on how to be more involved in the governance, how to make sure that our voice is heard.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. That I think is an extremely important point that you make, is that obviously, we do need funding to do a lot of those things, but there is also a lot of things that can be done just by actually deliberately creating the space, in particular for the youth to engage and really be part of those decisions and developing those strategies. And in particular here, being much more deliberate to create that space and those dedicated forum for the youth from both continents to really lead the way. Because whether we like it or not, indeed, I do agree, youth is leading the way. And increasingly will towards a blue future. And I think today's event and today's sort of discussion can only showcase the fact that indeed the youth is full of ideas, full of solutions. I think it's also a question of energy and willingness to, unlock those solutions and go the extra mile to make those happen. And I think here the message is very strong. Youth not only should, but has have a place and a very, very important role. And the more deliberate and the more proactive we will be on giving that role to the youth, basically the faster the solution will come once again, whether we like it or not. So on that very things that are very forward-looking and future-looking notes, I just want to thank you all for joining us today. I think that was a very, very important and very interesting discussion. Once again, I think it can only show how much energy and willingness there is to work and collaborate between both continents on ocean solution for climate, for people, and for nature. So I'm going to thank you all once again. And I can't wait to work very closely with you all on making those solutions happen. Thank you all and over.